There. Welcome to AstroWeather for September of 2026. Really happy that you're with us. My name is Pat Dumas. Let me throw a quick welcome to AstroWeather up here. There. So hope everybody is doing well. We've got a really interesting month coming up ahead. We've got actually 4 major things happening all on one day coming up, September 10th. Venus is going to be entering a longer than usual run through a sign in this month because it has a retrograde coming up later on in the year. Mercury is going to be changing sign twice, as it often does during a month. And then one of the big outer planets is going to be entering its 5-month retrograde cycle during this particular month. So as we're waiting for anybody else to be showing up, I'm just going to quickly throw some dates at you of things that are upcoming. The next Tarot Thursday that we will be having will be coming up on Thursday, September 10th at 8 p.m. right here in StreamYard. Tea and Tarot, which is the time when I'm able to be at Firefly Hollow Wellness Center offering in-person tarot readings. It's the only place and the only time I do it now because I'm old and I'm retired. That's on the second Saturdays of the month, and it will be this month on Saturday, September 12th. And then our next Astro Weather for the month of October will be held on Wednesday, September 30th. Okay, it is now 8:01, so we're going to go ahead and share the screen, and we are going to get started. And there it is. Okay, so you should be seeing Astro Weather out there for September of 2026. Now, the first thing, as I mentioned, we have Venus. Venus is entering the sign of Scorpio. It will be there for this particular round in Scorpio from September 10th all the way through October 25th, and then again on December 4th through the 7th of January of next year. And this is because it's going to be entering a retrograde cycle in October, or actually it'll be in the beginning of November of this year. So what does it mean when Venus enters Scorpio? Venus, as you know, is the planet you think affection, you think relationships, you think beauty and love, connection. It's the planet that talks all about how do we achieve rapport with one another, how do we network with one another. And it represents all things beautiful. I mean, we think about form, color, design, shape. These are the things that are associated with Venus. Harmony, balance. Now, we bring in Scorpio, and that's going to be a little bit different. It's been in Libra for the last few months, since about August 6th, or the last few weeks, excuse me. And Libra is its own sign. Venus loves being in Libra. It's been very much in a case of negotiation, in a case of sharing, harmony. Now it's going to be entering Scorpio. And when this happens, we're going to be finding ourselves having a lot more courage facing our shadow side, looking at our fears. When I say that, it's really about confronting them. It's about confronting the dark side, because quite honestly, Scorpio is not afraid to look at the dark side, never has been. So it's this idea of revealing secrets that need airing. That's the kind of thing that we'll be looking at when it comes to Venus and Scorpio. Dispelling illusions, embracing real truths. This means even with partners, friends, getting down to the nitty gritty. There's no shallow stuff going on. This is going to be very much the testing of trust, because Scorpio also talks about betrayal, trust stuff. So that makes sense as well. An excellent way of working with this part of this particular sign connection is to explore themes of mystery, of intensity, of emotional depth, even by your own shadow work, perhaps by incorporating art into it. Use drawing, use writing, use sculpture, whatever, use music, use dance. All of these things are a wonderful way to be able to allow yourself to access those inner turmoils that you may not be able to express comfortably in other ways. Finances, relationships, and creative projects all undergo a transformation and renewal during this particular period. A lot of healing can take place here after you have become aware of exactly what's going on and confronting the reality, of course, of what's going on. It's a really good time to make concrete plans for making improvements in any of those areas. In other words, find out what it is in the relationship that might need a little bit of repair. How do your finances need to be tweaked and overhauled? Your creative projects that may have stalled. Why is that so? Where has that been happening? And perhaps you can nudge some new ideas out of this particular period. This isn't a time to try to force a connection, though, with people who may have trouble with emotional intimacy or even with emotional authenticity. If they do not connect well with their own emotions, this is not going to be a good time for you to try to connect with them, because you may not be patient with it. You may not feel that you are getting the response you're looking for. So I would say it would probably be frustrating for both of you if you tried it at this particular juncture. Investments that you make when it comes to finances, I would recommend nothing that's short-term, nothing that looks like it's a get-rich-quick scheme or looking for a short-term turnaround. You want long-term planning in this particular case. Remember, Scorpio is a fixed sign. It's looking at the long haul, the long game. So look for long-term returns on your investment, hard work to go into play, and you should be in a much, much better phase. This is a time to be wary of a greater likelihood for jealousy, possessiveness, power plays, because Scorpio, when it is not in its most effective form, is often looking at those sides of our lives. Pluto, which rules Scorpio, is all about power in all of its forms, whether it's how we use it or how it's used on us. So when you match that also with Venus, it can come into play with relationships quite a bit. Just think about that. I would say that what the best thing to do for you during this period when it comes to your personal connections with other people, this is not the time to ignore personal boundaries, whether they're your own or someone else's. This means being respectful of understanding that if someone says no, they mean no. And that includes you. In the moment you erode your own boundary, you're making it harder for others to be able to meet you where you want them to meet you. So this is going to be in play, as I said, from September 10th through October 25th, and then again December 4th through January 7th. So you're going to have some time to play with this. Alrighty. Next up on September 10th, also this time at about 11:25. I put 11:25:58 because it's so close to 11:26, but I figured I'd be accurate here. September 10th will be the new moon in Virgo. It will be at 18 degrees Virgo, 25 minutes. And since Virgo is most often associated with organization, with being of service, with having an attention to detail, with anything to do with our health, this is a great time to set intentions to be more practical, to be more grounded. Now, for example, setting attainable and sustainable practical goals during this period for your new moon, right after the new moon period, might be a night to stay up a little bit later than usual. That would be a great time to go ahead and write down your goals for the next month or the next 3 to 6 months, right after 11:25:58. It's also a good time to put together management plans and business plans. So if you're thinking about getting a business put together, you might want to actually make your notes ahead of time and then put it into concrete form right after the new moon. It's a great time to look at all of your resources. And that's not just your finances, but your material resources as well. Perhaps you have some diversified stocks, or you have your assets in different forms. This is a great time to assess your portfolio, take a good look at it, and see if it's still working for you. When it comes for being more grounded, you want to shoot for being as reliable and as responsible as you possibly can. You can consider decluttering your home or your office area during this time, because you know that actually there has been scientific research done by Harvard University in the last 3 to 5 years. I can't remember exactly, but they determined that people who suffer from difficulties with distraction, if they remove the clutter from their area, their distraction level drops. So if you want to be more grounded and more focused in the here and now, more mindful than decluttering, which is a very Virgo thing to do, would be a great one to do for this particular new moon. During this time, you could also set intentions to have a meticulous eye for detail, especially if you have a job or an activity or a project coming up that requires it, something that needs accuracy, pinpoint accuracy, something that needs great precision. This would be a good time to think for that one. It's a time to set intentions to encourage self-reflection and self-healing, because one of the biggest attributes of Virgo is a desire to tweak, a desire to make things better, to improve things. And that thing, quote unquote, could be ourselves. So self-care and self-help very much are Virgo pastimes. New moon in Virgo is a good time to put together that kind of any kind of a self-improvement program, any activities or work, exercise plans, new dietary things that you want to do, setting up new routines for a better you. Perfect time for it. It's a time to release bad habits and actions that are limiting you, that are not allowing you to move forward and actualizing your own best self. And don't forget too, this is a great time for consistency. A consistent effort is what's going to build momentum. You can have motivation, but it only lasts so long. If you have a regular, steady routine already established, you're hitting your stride after about, what is it? They say it takes 66 days to build a new habit. By that point, you're just doing it automatically. You don't need motivation, because some days you're just not going to feel like it, but you need to do it anyway. Says the person who's been trying to get to the gym. I'm going to have to work on this myself on September 10th. I'll have to put together a self-help plan of that type. And it allows transformation and alignment with whatever your true purpose is in this particular lifetime. It might be a good time to think about that now. What is it that you think you're here to do? What is it that you think you came here in this incarnation to be able to manifest and make real? Then once you get that nailed down, then on the new moon, you can set your intentions to make that happen. Positive aspects of a new moon in Virgo include analytical thinking, great attention to detail, a lot more self-discipline than usual, and a desire to be of service. The negative or shadow traits that you might need to be careful of and be wary of are perfectionism, because let's face it, no one can be perfect. If you shoot for it, you're just basically setting yourself up to fail. Over criticism, and that includes self-criticism. This is the time to erase those negative self-talk tapes. And then finally, over worrying. Try to remain in the present. And this is why I mentioned being more grounded. Try to remain in the present moment. Use your breathing techniques so that you are not giving away today to being worried about what has happened in the past or dreading what could be coming in the future. All right? Let's stay in the here and now and really maximize this Virgo new moon. The next thing that happens on September 10th is that Mercury will be moving out of the sign of Virgo into Libra. This is when we can expect to see a lot more of a diplomatic, balanced, and more relationship-oriented approach to the way that we communicate and the way that we interact with other people. Mercury is our planet of communication, how we gather and disseminate information, what's our mercantile capabilities. So when we have Mercury in Libra, those skills, our ability to talk to others, always has more of a diplomatic feel to it. Greater tact is in place, because that's what Libra is all about. Communication is more rapport-based. more of a desire to be harmonious rather than a Leo type thing of being bold and in your face, or perhaps an Aquarian, Mercury and Aquarius desire to, to shock and surprise. Libra wants you to be calm and balanced and relaxed. You'll have a more genteel manner, or possibly, yeah. I mean, everything is dependent on what else is going on in your chart, of course. But, you have better diplomacy, better emotional intelligence, which means you can read the room better. You pick up on social cues more readily when Mercury is in Libra, and you have a better ability to see both sides of an issue. So that definitely makes it far easier for there to be a more harmonious and balanced way and method of dealing with other people. We're also looking at the necessity to try to avoid having more self-oriented communication and to avoid confrontation. The reason I say this, we're far more willing to compromise during this time, but we have to also be careful that we're not people pleasing. How do I put this? There's a need to be balanced more than anything else here. Being too Mercury in Libra can mean being so people pleasing that your own needs don't get met. Not being Libra enough means that you could be far too much involved in sharing about your own needs, your own agenda, and forgetting about the group as a whole. So really, it's a really important period of time to make sure that you are looking at the world from a balanced standpoint, a win-win kind of situation, so that everybody has their shot. It's a great time to boost your creativity because, as I mentioned previously, Libra loves form, color, art, design, shape, form. So, it's a great time to get your house in order, literally. You could maybe think about decorating, maybe talk to somebody about how you can be more colorful in your language, choosing different kinds of words to choose. I would say that what you want to do is be aware of making sure that you make the right word choices. Say what you mean and mean what you say. That's a good, wise bit of advice when Mercury is in Libra. Don't tell people what you think they're going to want to hear. Be as honest as you can without hurting feelings. That's your best measuring stick to use. People who work in the design, fashion, beauty industry, any of the visual arts, music, they're probably going to find that this period of time, which is from September 10th through the 30th, may be very lucrative for them. Because remember, Venus also rules money. So it's quite possible, Libra is ruled by Venus, which rules money, and Mercury rules our mercantile capabilities. So places like beauty salons tend to do very well while Mercury is in Libra. Okay? And that takes care of that one. And we move on. The last thing on September 10th is that the big planet Uranus stations at 5 degrees of Gemini, 41 minutes, for the first full retrograde of Uranus in Gemini that happened since the 40s. This is pretty big, quite honestly. The last time it did have a station. It stationed forward in Gemini last year, but it was a mixed Taurus and Gemini retrograde period. This one is just in Gemini. Uranus will never go back beyond 1 degree, 40 minutes of Gemini. So this is the first time since the 40s that the retrograde period will be completely in the sign of Gemini. Now, when Uranus was in Taurus over the last roughly 7 years, from about March of 2019 until April of this year, we were looking at everything Taurus: finances, money and currency, food, material resources, the body. And we were looking at how sudden change came about with that. Now, when we think about money and currency, all you have to do is think about the surge in cryptocurrency since 2019, right? Huge advances in online banking that have been happening. Also, the fact of inflation getting very, very out of control. That's part of a sudden change related to Uranus and Taurus. We have to look at money differently, right? Now, also look at food, because Taurus rules food and agriculture. So we're looking at the supply chain disruptions that were a big result, changing in food prices, the kinds of food we buy, the kinds of recipes that we choose, and the kinds of ways that restaurants package their meals. All of this has changed because of the big shifts and changes in that. We're also looking at far more sustainable agriculture as a result of Uranus and Taurus. When it comes to material resources, I always think of how this big surge in minimalism has come up in the last couple of years. That the big push for the Swedish organization style, right? These are all new. They seem like new things, but they're not. And it's simply because of a new way that we're looking at our material resources, thanks to Uranus coming through and shaking us up in the terms of that particular part of our lives. And then with the body, we had the COVID-19 epidemic, which really forced a whole new way of looking at how we look at ourselves. Now it's shifting into the sign of Gemini, and the parts that, or I should say it did shift into it as of April. But what we're going to be looking at throughout this period, these 7 years, is expecting historic kinds of changes in communication, in information and media, the way we receive it, the way we interpret it, education as a whole, media, our siblings, the way we look at siblings, our local communities, because the thing about Uranus is it's the most familiar to us, the most local to us. And short distance travel will probably make some big changes. Now, what you're probably going to do is experience some massive changes yourself in these areas. What I would recommend for your own selves is to take a look at where in your chart 5 degrees of Gemini rests. Now, they're actually between 1 and 5 degrees, because that's where the retrograde period is hitting. Now, I'm going to use myself as an example. I shouldn't, because, I mean, you're not supposed to bring yourself into this. But to share, I mean, it's the chart I know best, right? So my Gemini 1 through 5 is in my 12th house. And it's in probably the latter part of it, the later part of it. So we're looking at, for me, I'm looking at a big change in the way I look at my spiritual life, a big change, and the way I look at my own psychology, my own unconscious, my own digging into the dark closets. I'm doing shadow work, for example. This is the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense when Uranus is coming through this house. And the thing that's interesting that I really want to point out, if you notice, we're talking about very early degrees of Gemini, right? We're talking about 5 down to 1 degree out of 30, right? This means that the disruptions are very fresh. It's very new. We're feeling it. It's in the emergence phase. So we're feeling the sudden changes as still formulating. We don't know how all of this is going to shake out, right? So that tends to feel more disruptive and more unnatural than later on in the cycle by around, let's see, this is 2026, by around 2030, 2031, when it starts to get towards the end of the Gemini cycle. Things will feel calmer, feel more understandable. Like, I'll use the COVID-19 example. It was a big shock when it first hit in February of 2020, not long after Uranus moved into Taurus, which works with the body, right? But by the time it left this year, COVID-19 vaccines are totally in our control. We know how to handle this epidemic now. We're not as frightened by its emergence as we were when it first hit the scene, and it was so terrifyingly killing, quite bluntly. So this right now feels more disruptive than it will in a few years, when the time calms down and we start getting used to the shifts and changes. That's all I wanted to bring up with that one. What I would suggest when you're thinking about this 5-month retrograde period, because it will be in retrograde until February 8th of next year, and it will be in shadow right through almost the end of May, be open. Be open to the way you think, to your biggest basic ideas undergoing some change, changing the way you communicate, changing the way you connect with other people. Be open to shifts and changes. Use this period to maybe really take a chance and think about your mental frameworks. What can change? What is maybe holding you back from being able to move forward and become the person you've always wanted to be? Where is it that you can make a difference in your community? And if your community changes, how will you change with it? With information and media potentially changing as much as it very well could, how is that going to affect you? How can you get ahead of the curve and start being more flexible now in the way that you work with these things? So these are just ways to think ahead about how you can prepare for this retrograde period so that it doesn't become quite so unnerving as it possibly could have been. The next one that we look at, the next date that's of importance, is September 15th. And this is when the planet Neptune at 3 degrees of Aries is going to be making a sextile with the planet Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Now, Neptune, we think about idealism. We think about our creativity, our spirituality. We think about the arts. We think about photography. We think about the ideal. That's the kind of thing that is in our minds when it comes to idealism, quite bluntly. That's in our mind with Neptune. With Pluto, we're looking at power, this discovery of power and how it works in our lives. Trust and betrayal issues, but also transformation and great healing. And they're put together, they're connected by this wonderful aspect called a sextile, which offers opportunities. So this brings opportunities for your spiritual transformation, opportunities for great healing, perhaps when it comes to your own psychology or your spiritual life. You see how that works? It's pretty cool. So you'll be more able to uncover different layers, different strata of very complex issues. Pluto loves the complex. It loves to drill down into the most basic, important levels. So this is a good time to be able to do that. We're more fascinated by what motivates people, what drives people to do the things they do. Human motivation is a big aspect of this particular little transit that's going on. You're going to probably not kids. What I try to say? You're probably going to be having discussions over the water cooler about why Mary made that particular comment at the board meeting. You know, that kind of thing. What was she thinking? You know, where did that come from? That's the kind of energy that's in play. We tend to be more interested in cultural movements when this aspect is going on as well, because Neptune rules the masses and Pluto rules movements, large movements of people. We're talking about human rights here, gender issues, equality, the care for the planet in terms of our natural resources, all of these kinds of things. So if you are involved in any of these kinds of projects anyway, this is a good time to get your feet under you and get something done during the period that it's in orb, which is, you know, roughly about 3 to 5 days ahead, 5 to 7 days afterwards. It's also a great time to experience increased psychic energy. It wouldn't surprise me at all if dreams really play a big role for you. I would say that what you might want, this is, by the way, only the second of 13 perfections. They're called perfections when it is exact. Between 2026, first one was back in July, and 2032 in February. So, and they're all going to be with Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius. So this is going to be an interesting few years of us playing with this kind of energy back and forth. On September 22nd, the sun will enter Libra. We will be in Libra season. And this means it doesn't matter what your birth sun sign is, everybody sort of gets this extra feel, this extra veneer over them when the sun enters the different areas of the chart, the different signs. So on September 22nd through the, I think it's the 24th, unfortunately, this thing is covering it up, through October 24th. This is a great time to recalibrate your relationships because Libra rules relating. It's a time to study and repair any weak parts of your environment. It's associated, as we know, as we've been discussing with Mercury moving into Libra. Libra is associated with beauty, proportion, design. So it's a good time to go ahead and maybe take a good look at your own wardrobe. If you're going to decorate something, decorate you. The sun is all about the self, right? Examine all contracts and update or upgrade language wherever it might be needed. Libra rules the scales of justice. So this would be a good time to maybe, if you need your will updated, get that taken care of. Look at all contracts before you sign. Make sure that current negotiations are to your best advantage if you possibly can. The goal is to restore harmony and equality whenever you possibly can. So very, very much make sure that you want to make sure it's a win-win, as I've mentioned before with Libra. It's the best way for everybody to come out on top. I would say watch out for any people-pleasing that might be engaged here. Libra is so much about don't rock the boat that very often they will end up shorting themselves. The Libras themselves will end up not getting their needs met. When the sun is in Libra, that can happen to all of us far more than ever any other time. So watch out for people-pleasing attributes and guard against that. Make sure that you are keeping your boundaries good and solid. Don't avoid necessary confrontations, but don't go out and seek them either. This may be the best way to look at it. For this period between September 22nd and October 24th, the goal is for honesty, being authentic, not for escaping confrontation. Okay, makes sense? All right. So it's a good time to rebalance your relationships, your contracts, renegotiate any terms that need to be changed, and make small, precise adjustments to things so that the changes are incremental as opposed to big and huge. On September 26th at just before 1 p.m. is our full moon at 3 degrees of Aries, 37 minutes. Now, the sun is in Libra. That's how a full moon works. The sun and the moon are opposite each other, right? So the moon is at 3 degrees of Aries. The sun is at 3 degrees of Libra. The sun in diplomatic Libra reminds us that relationships are important, that what we need to do is think about what's important to do to maintain relationships and keep them strong. Compromise, negotiation skills, being gracious, having healthy work-life balance, right? But this is contrasted by the moon in Aries, which wants so much to be self-oriented, which has a lot more desire for our agenda to be the one that is in the forefront. And there's this much bigger surge of personal courage than usual, okay? And this is also a time of leadership as opposed to being one of the pack. So the whole goal here, because a full moon is always talking about the emotions that get attached to these things, it's important to look at the fulcrum point, the balance point between these two signs. Where does the self need to balance against the need to make sure others' needs are met? Assertion versus compromise, leadership versus team building, meeting our needs or helping others meet theirs as well, autonomy or companionship, authenticity or tact, and independence or dependence. Neglecting either end of this spectrum will not end well. It will just not work. It will backfire on us. So since emotions are the whole key when we're dealing with a full moon, what's important is to face these difficult parts that you have with these these balancing acts, so to speak. Face it and release those emotions as best you can. Now, in looking at this particular full moon, I was looking at the chart itself, and Neptune plays a role in here. The moon aligns with Neptune in this particular one. Neptune's also in the early stages of Aries. And as a matter of fact, it's only 1 degree away on the full moon, so it's very, very close. And it also harmonizes with Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. So what I'm thinking is that this is going to be a very good time for us to be our authentic selves, to allow transformation in our relationships to occur that need to be happening. It's a really nice potential full moon, as long as we make sure not to go too far in one direction or the other on that seesaw, okay? On September 27th, Mars will enter the sign of Leo. On this particular one, this is a feisty moon, or a feisty Mars, because it's a fire sign. Mars will be in place here from September 27th until November 25th. And since Mars is all about action, that action is going to be a lot more dramatic, Leo, with a lot more theatrical flair to it. You'll have greater energy and drive during this time. Whenever Mars is in one of the fire signs, it's much more comfortable there. It's what it's used to. We'll have a greater desire for self-expression, which is Leo's thing. And that's not just the case of artistic self-expression. This can be any kind of self-expression, including your anger, because Mars also rules aggression and anger. So take a look at where Leo rests in your chart, because that might tell you where your anger or your assertiveness, maybe is a better way to put it, might rear its head for you during this period of time. We tend to have far more of a craving for center stage, for being seen when Mars is in Leo, because that's Leo's thing. Leo is very comfortable being in the limelight, being center stage. We're more willing to be self-assertive, to be very competitive. Leo likes to win, okay? We have pride when Mars is in Leo. And we're more than usually sensitive to feeling dissed. We absolutely are. Leo does not like to feel disrespected, and Mars in Leo does not like it either. And Mars in Leo is more likely to do something about it. Anytime we feel that we're being seen as less than, what we need to do is to take a beat, take a breath, and really examine, are we reading that information we're receiving correctly, or are we attaching a judgment to it that may not be accurate? Now, it may be absolutely true, but we tend to be more sensitive about it during this period of time, and we can jump to conclusions a little too quickly when Mars is in Leo. So I would just warn on that score to be just a little bit careful of it, okay? Again, September 27th through November 25th, and then it will move into the much more analytical sign of Virgo. Then finally, on September 30th, our last one, we have Mercury entering the sign of Scorpio. It changes sign once again. Mercury at this point is going to be in a fixed water sign, and it's ruled normally by Mars. Mercury's presence here intensifies the planet's investigative capability, its incisiveness with thought. Remember, Mercury is about thinking, communicating, right? Mercantile ability. So it's fantastic for any work that you need to do, collaborations, or for communication work that requires research, digging deep, or subjects that require deep thought and really deep philosophical contemplation, getting down to the nitty-gritty of a situation. Your conversations and your style of speaking is very likely to become much more incisive, with a lot less, a lot less patience, frankly, for just mindless chatter. It's not likely to happen during this period of time, unless your chart is otherwise indicating that. It offers heightened intuition and perception. Scorpio is very quick on the uptake when it comes to perception. So your inner detective pushes forward a bit at this particular time. Your speech and your writing, any kind of communication style, you're going to find it far more emotionally charged. This is fixed water. So we're talking about emotions and intuition here. It's going to be more purposeful, not flighty in the least. You're going to be probably getting down to brass tacks and being very clear, not dancing around a subject. You will be intense and you will be clear. And that can be good and it can be challenging. Finally, it's a period for uncovering truths, especially truths that are related to your finances, to your emotions, and to your relationships. And the reason I bring this up is because you're dealing with the concept, the 8th house comes into play, because that's where Scorpio's natural placement is. That looks at insurance. That looks at investments. It looks at inheritances. It looks at joint resources. So I would say that if you have anything that has been questionable, or you've been trying to ferret out reasons why there's been problems, maybe with an insurance claim, you're probably going to be able to get that nailed down during this particular time. It's also not a time to keep secrets. Get them taken care of out in the open before this hits, or it will not end well for you. I really, really don't recommend that at all. So, my dears, that is pretty much it for this particular month. We're going to be once again coming back for not Tarot Thursday. Well, we are, but I'm talking more about AstroWeather on that same date, on September 30th. So I will see you then. This will be recorded and should be up not just on the Firefly Hollow YouTube channel, but also on mine. I've been able to find out how to bridge it as a collaboration so that you can go to my YouTube channel. That would be YouTube, Pat Dumas, astrologer. You'll be able to check me out there. And you should be able to see this by sometime tomorrow. Best of luck to you. I'm hoping that everybody's got the most wonderful, wonderful stars ahead. May your days be blessed. Thank you. Good night.